Let's get into another topic that I know you have some thoughts on and we talked about last week. Cornel West is announcing, he announced last week he is running for president on a third-party ticket. He initially said he was going to run with the Movement for a People's Party, which, as we pointed out last week, has ballot access in only 3 states, has not, to our knowledge, ever fielded a federal candidate, and is ultimately just kind of a narrative campaign. We'll give them that. It's a narrative campaign. People have said, and I agree, it's not a real political party, but he has affiliations with that group going back years through different protests or narrative campaigns around different issues, whether it's foreign policy or Medicare for all. They are, at best, a narrative organization. He announced yesterday he's actually going to run with the Green Party now because they actually have ballot access in all 50 states and campaign infrastructure and electoral infrastructure that the former Movement for a People's Party does not offer. As we talked about last week, that never made sense that he was going to run with them to begin with because, again, the ballot access hurdle is just insurmountable unless they had some grand strategy to get ballot access in the other 47 states between now and the election. But we'll see. Dan and Rob, I'm curious if you think this is going to shake up the election. Is he going to be a strong candidate? Is this a new like Ross Perot or Ralph Nader type figure? Or is this just, somebody Democrats might eventually blame if Biden loses?
I don't know. I saw a clip of him. I can't remember who was interviewing him, but he was talking about the switch up. And I mean, I have to say, like, when I first saw the tweets about that, I was kind of stoked, and I was kind of like, okay, here's a guy he's great on camera, he's great on the stage, gets on the Green Party ticket. Like, there's something about him that I feel like is going to get boosted, way more than Jill Stein. But then I don't know, I saw the clip of him, and the guy's old, like he's been in the fight for a long time. And, he just didn't quite have that same juice from whatever the last time I saw him was. But I don't know, it does raise interesting questions given, I think this specific cycle and the weird third party stuff that's going on, especially with no labels and, this proposed third party bid with one Democrat, one Republican, that, this bizarro group is proposing. And so I don't know, my mind immediately went to the fact, what if they could just raise a little bit of money, a couple mil, and, just try to do the same thing that No Labels is doing, which is basically just completely bludgeon Biden into concessions, and then, cut a deal at the end. I've been reporting for 2.5 years with, one of Manchin's closest former allies. We actually have a podcast. He's finally going on the record tomorrow for the first time. But, he's been saying that Manchin's going to run, for over a year to me. And he, also is like, people are saying that this is all just for the big money groups that are behind No Labels, but it's also for Manchin. And, what he says the play is that he can negotiate, an ambassadorship, more lofty appointments. He already got his wife appointed to the Appalachian Regional Commission. And, maybe he's going to, maybe he's not going to throw it to Trump. Maybe he throws in for Biden and tries to cut himself a deal. So I don't know. That whole tactic to me is very intriguing. I don't think Cornel West is going to raise the 70 mil that No Labels has in its bank, but I do think it's interesting to think about, what if this becomes a new part of of U.S. politics, where you just have these third-party candidates who actually do have money, who actually do, don't have a shot at winning, but have a shot at, rat fucking one of the real candidates, and they just cut a deal. I don't know. I don't think anyone's really tried to do that in recent memory.
As I was saying, the last time this came up, I never really understood what the People's Party was really bringing to that equation in a hypothetical Cornel West presidential run. It seemed like he was giving them way more credibility than they were bringing. And like you said, without ballot access, without really being a real political organization or political party, they did have those a couple thousand obsessive Jimmy Dore fans, though. And that's something you don't want to take lightly. That could swing the election either way. But I do think it was like we said, Cornel West, regardless of that, what I thought was kind of a flub or a fumble kind of right out of the gate, someone that I have a lot of respect for, who I think has really valuable contributions and progressive ideas around, healthcare, around war, around social racial justice, and all these things that, progressive minded people are supposed to care about. The Green Party seems like a way better fit, just in terms of infrastructure and in terms of just not being affiliated with this kind of grifty, scammy People's Party stuff. And I think it's going to be important in this process that since Biden has completely neglected to really fight for any of the progressive ideas that he kind of campaigned on, or even the whole agenda that he campaigned on, which he kind of jettisoned as soon as Joe Manchin said no to it. I think it's going to be really important to have Cornel West's voice out there and going in the media and talking about some of these things. Like you said, of course, I don't think Cornel West is going to have a surprise presidential victory on the Green Party ticket, but I do think it's important to have his voice out there, be out there as part of this process. And the same when it comes to the little spoiler stuff as well. I couldn't see anyone in the Democratic Party or Joe Biden cutting a deal with Cornel West, but that's my stance is going to remain the same though about whether he could act as a spoiler or not, which is that if Biden loses to Trump or whoever it ends up being, if they physically restrain Trump from running, which looks like they're going to have to do. If Biden loses, it's not going to be because of Cornel West and the Green Party. It's going to be because they didn't really fight for their progressive agenda that they campaigned on, especially for young people. A lot of the most biggest priorities with student debt, with the police and reforming the police and defunding the police, all of these things were just completely neglected. The environment, they're opening up new drilling avenues in these national parks. I mean, for every issue that young people especially really care about, Joe Biden has shown no interest in really pursuing or following through on any of that stuff. So if they lose, it's going to be because of that, not because of Cornel West or the Green Party or any of that stuff.
Dan, I'm curious how you can differentiate between these two. I mean, you've done some digging into No Labels and what they're doing. And as we talked about before we were recording, their polling shows that they would take a significant chunk of votes potentially from Democrats if they were going to field a candidate in the general election. And I agree with Rob. I don't think if it's, if West runs, it's anyone's fault but Biden and the Democrats if Biden were to lose. I think it's distinguishable because of how much money is behind No Labels and how they would run. The people who would vote for West are obviously never going to vote for Republicans. And I mean, maybe some would, but for the vast majority of people who would vote for West wouldn't. And that's like kind of the furthest left for the most part who would break for him. But No Labels positions itself in a very different way. Could you talk about, who is funding this, how they're running this operation, and, what their ultimate goal is?
Yeah, I mean, that one of the most interesting things to me is the fact that you kind of have these, at least from the way I understand it, you have two factions within No Labels. You have these foot soldiers who are actually total morons who believe in the press releases that they put out. Some of the research I've done into some of the fairly important people who are managing large parts of the organization, they are true believers. They actually are those weird radical centrist freaks who are they just love eating white food. They don't have any salt in their house. They just are so excited about the color beige. And that is just their entire life. But then, of course, you also have all these big GOP, spenders who've been funneling cash, into the org. You have the sort of accumulated interest groups that have surrounded Manchin, Collins, who in a certain sense, are often right-wing and conservative, but are really corporatists in the end of the day. And I think the media's had a hard, on the one hand, it's been total clickbait. The media hasn't been able to not report on this because it's an anomaly and it's strange. And there's, 70 mil is a lot of cash. But on the other hand, there has not been a deep reckoning. There hasn't been a breakthrough moment until I think today or yesterday when the Post reported that Biden was convening, a serious war room to address this problem with big players from sort of the centrist Republican camp, Klain, all these different people, because now they're realizing that like they're not messing around. This isn't some, out there idea. This is a real new development that people are not prepared for. And if there's one thing that the White House has demonstrated time and time again, it's that it's not fucking prepared for anything. And I think that the terrifying thing is the fact that the man overseeing the show right now is Jeff Zients, who even Politico, even the people whose job it is to just feed positive slop, praising the ghouls running the White House to the rest of the Beltway and the country. Even they are like have done pretty lightly critical reporting of Zients and his terrible management style, which I think demonstrates the fact that there's nobody driving this ship. And so great, they're going to go convene their meeting, but they haven't even been able to solve basic political problems. And so the idea that they're going to be able to address this radical, new, bizarro, unprecedented challenge seems unlikely. So I don't know. I've reported on Manchin for a long time. He's pretty much always gotten what he wants. He's dodged federal investigations. He's been able to run his coal company throughout all of this and profit off of it. The fact that he's not able to just swing his dick around on this one too and get whatever the hell he wants. I don't know. The guy survived this long. There's only one place left to go, the White House.
Right. I'm almost done with The Fight of His Life, the book by Chris Whipple, which is like the palace intrigue book of like the last year and a half of the Biden administration, and it's exactly what you're talking about. It is like one thing after another. It's just the Biden team like looking at each other and realizing, whoa, we were not prepared for this. Like whether it was
how are you not prepared for it?
Afghan withdrawal, the war in Ukraine, which he gives way more credit to them on the invasion of Ukraine than other issues. But for the most part, the general theme of this book is like they had no idea how to prepare for any of this stuff.
I don't know if it's true, but the best one I've heard, the best, most dramatic Biden fuck up, which I'm working to confirm, but a rumor I heard is that he accidentally said that he would choose a black woman as a running mate, but really he was supposed to say a person of color, and that the chosen VP was Cory Booker, and he misspoke and they couldn't walk it back. And to me, that is incredible and just rules so much.